Welcome to the Virtual Cheese Awards Class Judging 2023, showcasing the very best of British cheese. I'm Cara Bowen and I'm moderating this session this morning. Today we are going to be judging Class C2, which is the best other soft blue cheese. It has kindly been sponsored by the amazing Homage2Fromage, and we thank them very much for their sponsorship and support this year. I'd like to introduce you firstly to our amazing two judges today. We'll go ladies first. We have the lovely Bronwyn.
Hi there, I'm Bronwyn Percival. I'm the Technical Director for Nealshire Dairy, and I am the Chair of the Specialist Cheesemakers Association Technical Committee. And I'm really excited to be judging this year for the second time. And I love the Virtual Cheese Awards, first of all, because it gives me a chance to try all sorts of amazing and delicious cheeses, but also because of their amazingly generous support for the Science of Artisan Cheese Conference. So yeah, I'm delighted to be here. And yeah, over to you, Perry.
Hi, I'm Perry from Rennet and Rind. I am Chief of Cheese here at Rennet and Rind. I'm Britain's first afternoon of the year. Massively love cheese, particularly British artisan cheese. And this is my third year of judging at the Virtual Cheese Awards. And I love it because you get 6 minutes of us and the legendary Bronwyn. This is my second year judging to talk about your cheese, why we love it, and, you know, free consultancy, right? So yeah, it's a great opportunity for people. So I love it.
Thanks, guys. We'll dive straight in, and the first cheese we're going to go with today is C21127. Fantastic. If you want to unwrap it, guys.
Exciting. It's like the first Christmas present.
It's amazing. I'm so jealous.
Here we go.
Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at is the appearance.
Great. I mean, I'll jump in and say I think it has a really nice, even distribution of blue, which is always something that I'm looking for in a blue cheese. And a really lovely kind of living rind. You know, it doesn't look like it's been suffocated or compressed in any way. So I'm really liking the look of that.
It seems, you know, fairly flawless to me in terms of what they were going for. Like I said, you said even bluing that's in there, good rind establishment, you know, how that develops into flavor that's on there. Color's beautiful, you know, not a consistent kind of, you know, sort of orange that's running through, but gives it a little bit of personality and character. I like the look of it. Looks very appetizing.
Brilliant, guys. So out of 10, what would you like to give appearance?
I mean, it's hard to go for your first one, but I might say 7. I think it's good. And yeah, a really nice, solid appearance.
Fantastic. We are on a wavelength. I was going 7 as well. Yes.
Thanks, guys. Next, we're looking at aroma.
Really pleasant. Not too powerful. Nice kind of digestive kind of aroma that's in there. Not too strong on the bitters that are in there, closer to the rind is. Really easy going, like pleasant. I can't see anything that kind of offends me there at all.
No, I agree. It's nice. It's quite dairy in terms of it, you know, a little bit buttery, but you can definitely smell that it's a blue cheese. You know, it's hard to judge how exactly that's going to fit in with the flavor until we've tasted it. But I think in general, it's an inviting smell. It's not overly ammoniated, which is, again, is another thing that I would be aware of with this kind of cheese. So again, I would say, you know, it's not a super powerful aroma, but maybe it's not supposed to be. Again, for me, maybe a solid 7.
Yeah, I'd go 6 or 7. So I'm happy to go 7. I think it's, you know, it's kind of a little bit understated. Doesn't give you too much away. It's not too powerful. I'd like to see a little bit more on aroma, I think, if you know, if anything. So I'd be around 6. So I'm happy to go 6 or 7.
Let's go 6.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
You could go 6.5 if you want, guys.
No, let's go 6. Let's go 6.
Okay, we'll go with 6. So we're looking at texture next, guys.
It's got a nice sticky texture to it, actually, and a little bit of crumble, and how that translates into on the palate will be quite interesting. It's quite the breakdown is kind of accelerated on the outside. It isn't quite consistent all the way through, and how that translates on the palate is going to be interesting. Yeah.
I completely agree with you, Perry. The thing that's jumping out at me here is that it's breaking down from the outside in, and that it still has a fairly chalky core. And again, with blue cheeses, sometimes I'm looking for the breakdown coming from the blue mold and from the paste itself. So there's a little bit of a, you know, again, with the dimensions of this cheese, that may be what they're going for, you know, something that's ripened from the outside in. So yeah, it will be interesting to see, again, how this cheese tastes and what the totality of the experience is like. But that breakdown from the outside with the chalky core is not necessarily my like go-to profile for a blue cheese.
Yep, I totally agree. And I think it kind of, you know, not to sort of pull things across the flavor, the visual appearance that it has in terms of that duality of the breakdown just underneath the rind to the interior, kind of the expectation I was going to have with, you know, juxtaposed flavor, I suppose, where it was, as kind of delivered what I think it was going to give. So I think texturally needs a little bit more work. I'd like to see that outside more into the cheese. So I'm around sort of, there's nothing completely offensive about it. I just don't think it's spectacular, I suppose. So I'm around about 5, Bronwyn, if you're okay with that.
Right there with you. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Okay, well, let's dive in there and see if the taste measures up to what you think it's going to.
I think it's pleasant. I think that I think that the bitter is more pronounced, and that bitterness kind of leans into that kind of slightly like chemical kind of edge, which I know there's a market for people like who love that kind of blue cheeses that are anchored in bitterness. But I think the bitterness is kind of overpowering any of those complex aromas that we were getting. I don't know how you feel, Bronwyn.
I agree. And, you know, I think one of the challenges of blue cheeses is they do go through a bitter phase. While the proteins are breaking down, you get these bitter intermediate sized peptides that have quite a pronounced flavor. And if you push the maturation more, they often go and you get sweetness and all the blue cheese flavors that we love. Managing that age profile so that you can get the cheese to the customer at the point when it's no longer in that youthful kind of awkward adolescence and something that's like full-fledged deliciousness is a big challenge. And, you know, you might sacrifice some of this beautiful rind and the flossiness of the cheese itself to get something that had fully broken down. But I think it's paying the price in terms of that flavor, which is, for me, fairly narrow and really dominated by that youthful bitterness.
Yeah, I think just... Yeah, I think so. Yeah, more time, maybe different temperatures might provide a different outcome. I think there's 2 markets really in this one. I think there's the people who love this bitter like attack that you have, and that's a smaller market. But if you're going for that, then this kind of ticks those boxes. But in terms of a wider, more you know, kind of audience that enjoys blue cheese, I think, like you said, a little bit more age, a little bit more kind of maybe adjustment on the maturation. I think you'd be there. So is it kind of underwhelming for me in terms of how that delivers? So I'm around a 4, if you agree.
I do agree, yeah.
Thank you very much, guys. Okay, if you want to sip of water, whatever you guys want to do, cleanse your palates, and we'll move on to the next cheese, which is C21119.
Okay, this one is 119. Yes, this really well foiled.
Beautifully wrapped.
We are looking for appearance first, guys.
Great.
Oh, that looks yum.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, in terms of the way it looks, good covering of blue, even that's in there. We've got some sort of spatterings of some kind of darker molds that are on the outside, so it'd be interesting to cut into that and see if that's in the cheese. The rind is thin on the outside, but well established. Looks like a well manufactured cheese and looks professional, like they know what they're doing.
I agree. I like the fact that the paste is really bright, that there's a lot of contrast and definition between those blue, the blue veins and the white paste. The one thing that jumps out at me is that, like, right under the rind, it's very, very blue. And as Perry said, I'm going to be interested to see whether, what that area there is tasting like, because a lot of those rind microbes are not necessarily the same as the blue cheese microbes. And so, yeah, that would be a question for me. But overall, I don't know. What do you say, Perry?
I think it's pretty flawless, to be fair. I mean, there's nothing insulting about there. There's some questions about what it would taste like and on the palate. I mean, I think I'm around about a 7 in terms of where it would be, just, similar to kind of...
If it's flawless, Perry, sorry.
Yes, I think it's... this is where it begins to get a bit difficult in terms of, it seems to me a little bit perfected in terms of what they're doing and lacks character and sort of more definition. I don't know how you feel about that, Bronwyn, if that is unfair of me to put it there.
I don't think so. I think, it's interesting looking at this rind and how thin it is. Like, on one level, I like a thin rind, but on this another level, it doesn't really feel like it's part of the cheese. Just feels like it's grown on the outside. So again, you have to, for me, aesthetically, and again, coming from me, I would put this around a 7. I think it's good. I think it's probably accomplishing what it's trying to do. I don't think it's a technically sophisticated exercise in, like, a blue cheese rind and appearance.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you, guys. Sorry, I was just asking because you said it was flawless, Perry. So
that
would suggest a 10 to me. But
it's a strange one when I use the term flawless, because I just like to see more character and more sort of definition on that. And there's kind of areas where I feel like, there's a degree of kind of over manufactured that kind of comes into that position where, and I'm guessing, that's a personal preference on where we, judge cheese, I suppose.
Cool. Thank you for the clarity. So aroma, guys.
Kind of to me, my piece is a little bit kind of devoid of any kind of aroma. If anything, it's leaning into that kind of bitterness that's there. It's very, very clean, one-noted. Not giving too much away. I'm not as keen on it at all, really.
To me, it feels like it's smelling a little bit, it's smelling blue, but it smells a little bit old blue to me. Like the blue mold has kind of peaked and it's starting to fade. And to my mind, it's not as fresh as the last one. Now, we're going to knock it from being too fresh and too bitter on the first end, and then maybe in the other direction, like, what are they looking for? But I do think that the aroma, the aromatic projection of this cheese to me says older blue, even though the paste looks quite bright. So again, I'm not super struck by the aroma. I might go 5.
Yeah, I'm happy to go 5 in the middle. I don't think there's anything particularly unpleasant about it. I think it just lacks a little bit of kind of power and, dimension, I suppose. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll move on to texture, guys.
Cool. Well, in terms of this cheese, what I'm seeing in terms of the texture is that it's quite a firm and solid cheese. The way that it cuts on the knife, it sort of flakes a little bit. But what I do like about it is it has a sort of shiny marble-like appearance on the cut surface, and that's a good feature for a blue cheese. For me, unlike the last one, which was quite curdy, this feels like it's more broken down, and I would like mark it a little bit higher for having achieved that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I'm getting a little bit kind of a degree of crumble kind of on the knife that's there, which kind of leans into that fresher kind of vibe, younger vibe where it is, I suppose. I think what they're planning to do, they've set out on texture, and I think that's pretty pleasant to get. So I'm kind of around about sort of 6, 7 on that for me.
I would say let's go 7. I think it's a firm cheese, and I think it's hitting the mark. So yeah.
Yeah, okay. And finally on this one, guys, the flavor.
Last but not least.
It's really nice.
Yeah.
It's kind of Yeah, like it is a little bit of a trick with the aroma. I thought it was going to be lacking in that kind of flavor, but the balance of the kind of bitterness is more favorable. We're anchoring kind of more in that bitter edge of where it is. There's a nice little savory note at the front, which is good. The texture, although on my piece is a little bit crumbly, it combines together really nice to actually deliver kind of quite a solid flavor, and equal. Yeah, I really like it actually.
Me too. I'm surprised by, you know, and I guess this is going back to texture, but it's like dense but creamy at the same time. And I was really worried about like nurdles, we call them, like little bits within the cheese, and it doesn't, even though the blue is quite full on. I agree with you too. The flavor is quite nice. It's a very round flavor. It's quite savory. It's not a punchy blue by any means, but there's a depth to it that I enjoy. So yeah.
Yeah, there's a nice savory, there's a nice pickup of like tang spice, which dissipates really quickly, finishes with a little bit more bitter, and then it just kind of, you know, that then they kind of combine all the way to the end. It's really a really nice surprise. For me, you know, it doesn't blow it out of the water, but I'm thinking like 8.5.
Yeah, I'd say 8. Let's I would happily eat that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Brilliant, guys. Thank you. The next cheese we're going to move on to is C2 1120.
1120. Another foil package.
So with our blue cheeses, we have the lovely Lottie Shaw, who is providing us with the biscuits to cleanse your palates with.
Beautiful. All right.
C21120, right?
C21120, indeed. Looks beautiful.
Yeah.
Bronwyn, do you want to?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. So to me, this looks quite similar to the last cheese. Obviously, it's got annatto in it, so it has that richer yellow color. Still, like the previous one, quite high level of blue. So, you know, appearance-wise, I like that the rind seems just a little bit more. There's a little space of cheese between the rind and the blue interior. Yeah, I would. I think that's a nice looking blue cheese. What do you?
Yeah, I always like the kind of, obviously annatto kind of like base cheeses. I always like the contrast to the colouring of blue that they have in there, and some of them are like ebony, kind of rich, and I think the balance is really nice with the colouring that they've got actually on the base of the cheese. I think it just looks really, really pretty. And yeah, the rind isn't particularly well established on mine. It seems like kind of like a late kind of thing, but actually, yeah, a really attractive looking cheese. And I think a lot of people would have their eye drawn to this. You know, I'll be around about an 8.
Yeah, let's go with an 8. Sounds good.
Right, guys. On to aroma, please.
Yeah, I mean, similar to the last one, I'm getting a lot of kind of like very well developed and possibly a little bit musty blue aroma on that. Just doesn't smell very fresh to me. I'm not getting a huge amount of cheese aroma, and if there's a, you know, this is always the risk with blue. You end up with a lot of, you know, a lot of lipolysis, a lot of proteolysis. It feels maybe just on the verge of just a kind of stale aroma. Maybe the flavor is going to make up for that.
Yeah, I literally have nothing to add to that. That is absolutely spot on. It's like, you know, it's where the other one just had like that kind of lighter kind of like element to it. This one has got some kind of deeper mustiness to it, which I agree with, which I don't think, you know, similar to the last one, it isn't particularly pleasant for me and attractive in terms of the aroma. So I'll be around about 4 going on that scale for me.
Me too.
Texture next, guys.
I'm going to go ahead and taste it, because actually having tasted the last one, I feel like that's a really important part. The texture on your tongue, as well as the texture looking at it. Once again, I think it's a firm cheese. So we shouldn't knock it for that. Indeed, it's fully broken down. It has that marble sheen in the orange bits. I like that about it. Let me just taste it.
Interesting, because what do you call it, nagels or
Nurdles.
Yeah.
I have no idea how you spell that.
Yeah, I think they're prominent on the palate, which I wasn't expecting, because obviously I thought they may have been in the last one like you were suspected, but I'm getting some of those that are in there which are particularly unpleasant because they're not really adding anything to the experience. It's kind of like, you know, overcooking a roux and splitting milk. Yeah. It's a barrier to the experience. So yeah, texturally, I'm moving kind of, and yeah, they're sticking there quite a lot, aren't they? I'm near a 3 and a 4 on this one, Bronwyn, in terms of texture.
I think, let's just say I've had more nerdly cheeses than that. I'll go with a 4. I do think they're slightly distracting. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And for anybody watching, how do you define a nurdle? What is a nurdle?
Well, I can show you what becomes what probably will feel like a nurdle on your tongue is a big patch of blue like this, or the bit around a piercing mark. You know, here's where a needle has gone in and left a cavity in the cheese that's been filled with blue mold, and the mold that can grow depending on this. I think it's depending on the underlying structure of the cheese. The texture of the mold that grows can sometimes be quite bitty, leafy, sandy, and those kind of bits generally, I think.
Yeah, and I suppose, you know, a simpler way, like what most people would understand is, you know, crystallization in cheeses. You know, essentially, you know, when you get that crunch, it's quite pleasant, where these are like softer, and like I said, like a splitting of a roux or splitting milk. They're not particularly pleasant, because I think we have evolved over the years to kind of think that's a bad thing, splitting of milk and things like that. So yeah, they're just a little bit more, they don't add anything at all.
Yeah.
Okay. So did we want to give that one a 4? Was that, did you say?
Yeah.
And then the flavor?
You know, I don't like the flavor of this one as much as I like the last one. It tastes just a little bit dull. I'm not getting the rich savoriness that I got in the last one. It's more just, I taste old blue, and it's not giving me a huge amount else. So, you know, it's not unpleasant by any means, but it's just not exciting me to go back and have another bite.
Yeah, I'm getting a tad of ammonia in there in terms of the age. The pepperiness is coming through, but it doesn't seem like it was intentional. That kind of clawing that you get, it's not pronounced, so it seems like it shouldn't really be there. It's kind of a confusing experience. Yeah, so not for me. So where would you like to go, Bronwyn?
You know, I think it's to the extent that it's maybe doing what it set out to do, I might say 4.5, 5. You know,
yeah, I'm happy with 4.5. That'll be fine. I think that's, yeah. I think it's just. I think once again it kind of pulls into those really select type of people that would enjoy that cheese, and it's a little bit of a challenge actually, and I think that's why it scores in around about 4.5.
Nice.
Confirm, Cara.
I'm going to move you swiftly on to our next cheese, which is C2 1121.
1121.
Got a little bit of length, that one, in terms of not in a pleasant way, the previous one. Okay.
Cara, have the poor blue cheesemakers got the harshest judges in the entire virtual cheese award?
Yes.
Okay.
They've also got the harshest moderator, so there you go.
They drew the short straw. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
All right. If one of you wouldn't mind holding it up to the camera, so beautiful. Thank you. That's great. So appearance-wise, shall we start with you, Perry?
I mean, it's striking, isn't it? Always when you get that kind of stark white paste that's in there, you know, so we're looking at goat, buffalo, something like that, that it may be, or, you know, I'll hazard a guess. And yeah, the blue isn't particularly as consistent as before, but I'm aware that in sheep or goat or buffalo milk, that becomes harder, become more pronounced as the cheese breaks down. But the bluing's really nice. It's got like this kind of emerald kind of coloring to it, which is great. The rind isn't particularly well established, but more established than the previous ones. Yeah, looks great.
Yeah,
brilliant. So what are we going to go with in terms of a score?
I think the only place I would knock it is for the inconsistency of the blue development and for the tightness of, and that's related to the tightness of the paste. You can see that in those piercings. So I would say I would be like 6. I like the look of it.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, 6.
You think that's too harsh for it?
I think I think the kind of the starkness of it in terms of looking at it aesthetically, you know, I agree with the kind of consistency of blue that we've seen that's in there. I think, you know, I'll be happy with like a 6.5 because I just love the contrast in terms of the colouring against the blue, you know.
I'm happy with that, yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, guys. Aroma?
It's a bit mushroomy on the rind. It's a little bit more kind of fresh and dairy smelling. There's a bit more kind of like life in the smell than some of the other ones that we've been looking at so far. I like the aroma. Yeah.
Yeah, spot on. Yeah, I like this. It's got a little bit more to it, more character that's coming out. Like I said, more life. I really like it. I'm kind of around a 7. Nothing blows me away, but it's just a nice level of kind of complexity that's there.
I agree. Yeah, let's go with 7.
Yeah.
Are we looking at texture?
Whatever helps you best, guys. So if you want to try the flavor before the texture, then whatever. You know,
I think it's really nice on the knife texture. It just sort of glides through like just some kind of thick set kind of butter or something like that.
Very buttery, like butter from the fridge. I like that.
And surprisingly different on the palate.
Yeah, it hasn't quite broken down to the extent that I thought it would from the look of it. It looks so smooth, but actually it's a bit floury.
Yeah.
I think that detracts from it a little bit. So where I was going to be kind of an 8, I might knock that down a little bit on the texture.
Yeah, I agree. It's kind of deceiving when you cut into it and it glides through really nice and you get excited about it. But obviously on the tongue, yeah, it's more firmer and more together and more difficult. You know, I'll be around about 6.5 on this one.
Me too. But really like very kind of like surprising. The texture doesn't match what I'm seeing. So
yeah, I'm interested how that happens, to be fair. It's, you know, I don't think I've seen a cheese that the knife glides through so well, and on the palate it's a completely different experience. Borderline Wensleydale kind of crumbly kind of area, you know.
And I feel like flavor-wise, it's really dominated by those youthful, it's not bitter, but I think, you know, in many cases, these goats, sheep, buffalo milk cheeses aren't as prone to bitterness as cow's cheeses when they're at young blues. So it's like not entirely surprising to me that it's not as bitter, but it just feels like it's not quite ripe yet. It's holding in a lot. It's very primary, very lactic. But like, if I'm going to eat a blue cheese, I'd love to have this with like the sweetness and the intensity and the smoothness and the creaminess just dialed up to 11. And I feel like it's really kind of like only halfway there.
Yeah, it's interesting. The preference of the flavor towards the rind is far more. I prefer that. I'd like to see more of that. And you know, although the rind actually texturally is kind of, we're getting those bitty kind of elements. I'd like to see more of that throughout the cheese in terms of, you know, having that age. But you know, I do like it. You know, and I think a lot of people would like it. So I'm around about, you know, a 6.5, something like that.
Let's go 6.5. I think there's a lot going for this. And maybe this just isn't kind of delivering as much as we think it maybe could.
I totally agree. Yeah, I think it's just got a little bit more to go, and I think, you know, on another day, another batch, you know, it could blow me away.
Yeah.
So we're going for 6.5 again, guys.
Yep.
So I just want to clarify with you for this one, we have appearance 6.5, aroma 7, texture 6.5, and flavor 6.5.
Texture lower? Should we give texture, should we knock texture a little bit? Maybe like a 5?
I think a 5.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you, guys. Right, next cheese is C21123.
Excellent. Here it comes. Oh, it's another white one.
It is, yeah.
Looks amazing from this side, Perry.
It does. I just love that stark contrast that's in there, and then we're getting some of that bluing, which, like, when I'm maturing blue cheeses, there's like, I call it ebony blue, and everyone has a go at me because it can't be both. But it's like my descriptor of when I think the blue is going to be really powerful and savory, and I look for it in our crop well and things like that. And when they're ready, that, you know, when I get that coloring, they're ready to go. So that's like a personal preference for me. I love cheeses when I see that kind of dark set green that we've got in there. Yeah, so it's good. I think Bronwyn, like, once again, we've got some kind of inconsistencies with that may have some comments about that.
Yeah, I think it's a blue that's been made in a way that the paste itself is super tight, and where we're getting the blue is where the needles have gone through it. In general, I think I prefer cheeses where the blue has been able to spread more throughout the cheese based on the curd structure, and maybe a little bit more drainage and a little bit firmer curds before molding would help it do that. That said, it may be that the aesthetic of this cheesemaker is to get something that's super white and then have that you can see the needles. But I agree with Perry. I like the kind of greenness of the blue, and I like the bright white paste. So what do you think? 6.5? 7?
Yeah, it's 7, I think. I think, yeah, and the coming back down to, you know, if we go back to, you know, after we eat it, is once again that thing that if the covering of the blue and the flavor and the aroma pulls it off, then, you know, then the piercing kind of is achieve what the cheesemaker, I would imagine, would want to achieve, right? I mean, that's the, yeah.
Aroma,
Sorry. Aroma.
It glides through the knife again.
Texture. We can do texture first.
Yeah. It's very creamy. It feels almost like a cream cheese, to be honest.
I was just thinking that in terms of the cream cheese.
And that very shiny marble kind of gleam on the surface in the light, which again, I like. From a texture point of view, oh, there goes biscuits. From a texture point of view, I hope this follows through with that texture on the palate, which I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a sucker for cream cheese-like textures.
It's good, that. I like that. I like the power of it. I like that it delivers on the knife glide. You're totally right with the cream cheese kind of thing. And that flavor actually comes through in that profile. Yeah, I'm a fan. I like this one.
Yeah, me too. Favorite so far. I would like put that on my cheese board. So
well, that is praise amongst praise. So we need to just give it its scores then. We've done appearance is 7, aroma.
It's not a cheese for me that's massively about the aroma. I'm not getting a lot of aroma. It's not a bad aroma. So I guess, you know, I think that's worth something, but it's not for me a particularly aromatic cheese.
Yeah, I think there's not much complexity there that's going in. I think it's pretty cool that it's almost like a ninja. It's kind of like stealthing, you know, in terms of the cleanness of the structure, the gliding on the knife, the aroma not being overwhelming, and then the flavor's like bam. So yeah, I'm like 6.5 for aroma.
Yeah, 6.5. It's yeah, 6.5. Texture, I would give maybe like 8.5.
Yeah,
9? Yeah, 8.5.
Yeah, 8.5. Yeah.
And flavor, I rank pretty high as well. I think it's Really nice, no bitterness, really kind of round. I'm getting freshness, but blue. I would say 8.
8. Yeah, I'd go maybe 8.5 on this
8.5.
one. I think it's, yeah, I think that's a big, bold flavor. And, you know, these are the challenging cheeses that are really hard to pull off that big, pronounced flavor. And I think they've nailed it, to be fair. So,
8.5.
yeah, I love that. Yeah. Yeah. What do we think? Buffalo milk, maybe? Do we think?
Possibly, but I don't think it's sheep, and I don't think it's goat. So let's, you know, I'm prepared to be humbled. But yeah, no, I'm with you.
Yeah, it's got that kind of aromatic, perfume-esque kind of nature to it that's in the background, which I think buffaloes tend to have in the blues. But yes, let's hang our hat on that and see how we get on.
Yes. All right. What's next?
Brilliant, guys. Next cheese is C21124.
Great.
Cara, can you tell us if that's buffalo or not? Or...
I can't, I'm afraid.
Oh, okay.
We'll remain in the dark.
I know, that's testing my
I'll tell you on the 17th if you still want to know.
Okay.
Sure we will.
Yeah.
Lovely. Okay.
Okay.
There we go.
Yeah, the rind has rubbed off quite a lot on this one. Getting an expert on this cheesemaker's rind. I think we have a collection of their cheeses. Bluing equal, that marbling is kind of like half there. The rind is really kind of suffocated. I'm guessing that's kind of like the packaging or maybe the youthfulness of it. I think it's pretty pleasant, but, you know, doesn't particularly blow me away as well.
No, it feels like a throwback to the first of these, this run of cheeses a little bit. So yeah, I agree. I'd knock it a little for the rind that just looks a little pallid, a little rubbed off. Wait, 5?
Yep. Yep.
So what's next? Aroma?
Yes, please.
Getting a little bit more farmyard in the kind of like center of this, a kind of a little bit kind of like weirdly like cow kind of thing that I'm getting in the middle.
Kind of verging on the TCP phenol kind of spectrum, which I think is not surprising given that we're looking at a blue cheese.
Yeah.
Not as fresh, you know, but actually I like the cross section. I like the look of this bit a lot more than I like the look of the surface of the, you know, the cheese that I unwrapped. It's just not quite as blue. It's nice appearance. But anyway, aroma, I'm not like blown away by it. 5?
Yeah, 5. Yeah.
Texture.
Once again, it does that kind of trickery thing where it feels like more crumbly and it comes together. These cheeses are a little bit deceiving in terms of what your anticipations are, which is, you know, I don't know. I think that's quite pleasant. Texturally, I think it comes together. I think it's nice. It's good.
I agree. I like the texture of the paste where it's broken down. It's super silky. It's fully broken down. It's not chalky or underdeveloped. I feel like that structure is holding this blue in a slightly more awkward way. There's a bit of the nurdle there in the blue bits. Like it just sticks to my tongue a little bit, even though the creamy bit of the cheese, I like that texture. So I don't know. For me, it's like a 6.5.
Yep, I have to go with that. I was going to go 6, so 6.5 is great.
Okay, and then finally, flavor. I think it's suffering by comparison with the last one. You know,
yeah.
It's not bad. Like it tastes like a blue cheese. It tastes fully mature. It's not bitter. I'm not like, it's not memorable for me. It's
yeah, I think it's good. And I think like the balance is really great, and that comes through. And they pulled off kind of what a blue cheese is and what we're expecting. I think, does it give you more? Does it knock you out? You know, and unfortunately, obviously, the previous cheese was just very, very big. This one is a little bit kind of understated and kind of like good. And I think that puts it around about 6.5.
6. Let's go. Yeah, let's go 6.
Yep. Okay.
Great.
Thank you, guys. The next one we're moving on to is C21101.
101. Another Anato blue. Hopefully I can get it open. Bear with me here.
It's interesting what, like, obviously, what do you call these packaging, like half vac pack and vacuum sealing, I should say, what due to the initial experience of the aroma. It's just a side comment. I don't know how this works, Cara, when you're talking about packaging, I suppose, is that you do get a very kind of burst, because naturally you've got to break it open, of kind of unpleasant stoutness that's in there. Which may, we're looking to further if it emanates from the cheese, but just as a side note on packaging, it putting it in that sort of backpack does give you a real bad start in terms of,
It's kept like any sort of surface mold from forming, but the whole thing feels a little bit like clammy, and and the side that was down feels like it's been sitting almost in a little bit of a whey puddle, and the rind is just a little kind of darkened and tacky. So I think from an appearance point of view, and again, I don't think that this is judgment on the cheese itself, but like how it has been packaged, which again is a decision that's I think probably been made by the person selling the cheese. It's not the most attractive, not the most attractive one. The cheese itself, nice even distribution of blue. Not too tight in terms of the paste. It looks like maybe they're using a few gas formers in there to get the holes that the blue are forming in. And, it's interesting where it's been cut. It has that sort of, I don't know if you can see, the sort of ruffled look.
Yeah, it's like a kind of when I go swimming for kind of like half an hour and I'm getting wrinkly on my fingers. It's kind of...
Yeah, it looks like the knife is somehow catching it and then slipping through. So you're getting a sort of... It will be interesting.
Or the slice that's happened sitting in the whey puddle has deformed those cuts to be a little bit wave-like potentially.
So I think from an appearance perspective, I think we're gonna maybe have to knock it a little bit.
Yeah.
Like a 4.
Yep, let's go 4. Yeah.
Okay, aroma. Oops, sorry. Nice. It smells, there's a little bit more like the ketone, high note, slightly alcoholic scent to it, which is very kind of blue cheese appropriate. I think aromatically fine, like 7.
Yeah, 7. I think that's just nice and clean, and like you said, I quite like that alcohol note that's in there. It's got like a little bit kind of like aged wine to it kind of thing, but not really pronounced if I was going to put it anywhere. So yeah, I like that. So good.
And then guys,
we're going to do texture and flavor sort of simultaneously.
Yeah, I think so. That seems to work for you guys in the way you want to judge. So I'm happy with that.
Yep, that alcohol kind of note pulls through. It's more challenging for me. There's a lot of up and downs. There's a lot going on there.
It's very. Go ahead. Sorry.
Now, I'm struggling to kind of put it together. I was hoping you would take over so I could just align my thoughts on that.
No, I mean, for me, this is the first really sweet cheese that we've been tasting. The way in which it's maturing is definitely taking it off in that very kind of sweet blue direction. And actually, I think from a like crowd pleaser perspective, I think that would rank very high. Texturally, there's something a bit odd about the way that it's cut and it's flaking apart, even if that isn't necessarily something I can detect on my tongue. It's like, I don't know. I have a question mark over that, over the structure, over the texture as a result of that. Go ahead.
Yeah, it weirdly feels quite inconsistent in terms of that texture, and in different parts of the tongue, it's quite. And I don't know how that's established. There's a lot of questions with this cheesemaker about, if they are from the similar cheesemaker about, my keys on kind of what it normally would feel like on my tongue are very different to the actual experience. I think the only one is the cream cheese kind of thing. Yeah. So yeah, no, I don't think the texture on the tongue is particularly pleasant, and it feels inconsistent, even though I visually can't see any markers that are there. So I'm kind of, you know, at a kind of 5 on the
5. And then I think I would rank the flavor a little bit higher. I think it's a very, you know, I think it's a very process driven flavor in terms of, I think those flavors are coming from the starter cultures and how those are broken down probably in an anaerobic, you know, environment over probably, I mean, I would say this is probably quite an aged cheese, but it delivers a flavor punchiness that I think is attractive, even if it's a little bit like,
yeah.
So 7?
Yeah.
7?
Yeah.
Right, guys, can I just come back to you on that? So we've got a 5 for texture and a 7 for flavor.
That sounds good to me.
Great. Okay. We are moving on to C2 1102.
1102. Oh, lovely wrapping.
I do really like that.
Yeah, it's like a tropical kind of beach.
Yeah.
Very shimmery.
This does feel like a Christmas present. Okay.
Ooh. It's another buffalo, sheep, goat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we'll see at the end. We're going to have to stack these up and see how good we are. Yeah. Yeah, once again, I love the stark difference. I've got a little bit kind of uneven bluing, which is actually kind of like very pronounced over the cheese that's in there. Particularly on this side, like there's just a kind of hole down there. And I'll cut into that to see if that's more. There's something that's just kind of, I think maybe the bluing is kind of overly populated, and like, I'm kind of struggling with this one a little bit. I like the rind. I think the rind is more established, you know, and looks more consistent in visual texture, although there's a lot of kind of different molds that are developing on there.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like it is funny how there's clearly some variation within the cheese, but overall, I would say the level of blue, provided that blue isn't really gritty, I don't mind it. I think actually it looks pretty like legit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So appearance, would we say like I mean, you seem to maybe not like it quite as much. I was going to say a 7, but would you go less than that?
Sorry, I think it's like, I think there's 2 things going on, kind of like my personal preference, what cut you have, you know, but yeah, I need to cut into it and see kind of, it's just maybe luck of the draw in terms of cut. No, I just have a chunk that just hasn't got any blue in, you know, and actually is extremely dry, like in terms of the differential that I have. I know it's near the rind, but if I kind of cut on this side, which is closer to the bottom rind, you know, we're kind of not getting, we've got more of a consistent through, where this one little patch, which was missing.
No, I see what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely.
It goes back to your comments about it being uneven bluing, slightly overpopulated in areas.
Okay, so where would you be on that?
So like I said, I think it's, you know, so you were near a 7, right?
Yeah. But
and then I think just because the kind of that defect that I have there, and it can even drawing my eye to it, not defect, I kind of feel like I'm at a, you know, sort of, I'll mark it down a 6.
Okay, let's do that. I thought if you were going to say 5, I was going to go for 6. So yeah, let's.
Okay, there we go. Yeah.
We're going with 6 then, guys. Yep.
So now are we aroma?
Yes, please.
Smells like a blue cheese. That's good.
Yeah.
Massively pronounced aroma.
No, not pronounced, but I like the fact that I kind of feel like out of these cheeses, this is the most kind of familiar blue note that we have had so far, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's not projecting a huge amount of aroma at me. It's not a bad aroma. It's not ammoniated. I would give it kind of a nice middling score, but just, yeah. What do you think? Another 6?
Yeah, so 5.5 or 6. I kind of feel like, yeah, it's nice to kind of have a cheese that I feel like if I was blindfolded, I definitely know what that note is in terms of being a blue. I think there's that familiarity is quite nice. So yeah, but opposed to that, there's not much going on beyond that, you know. So yeah, 5.5.
You 5.5.
Yeah.
I think.
Okay. And then your texture and flavor.
So that's really interesting, where I feel like I've been quite positively inclined to this cheese, maybe more so than Perry. For me, this flavor is very, doesn't do much for me. There's not a lot going on in it. It almost feels, yeah, like locked in somehow. It's salty, but I'm not getting a lot of blue flavor actually. And the texture feels a bit dense and a bit dry. Yeah, I feel like I'm having to work to get a lot of flavor out of it. And so even though I thought, you know, it's a little underwhelming.
Yeah, I think there's, I think I would go goat with this one. If I was going to, okay, I'll hang my hat on that again. What am I doing? What am I doing?
Notes for you, Perry. Perry said this was joke.
Because it just has that slight underlying floral grassy element that's in there. I feel like I'm constantly eating rind. Do you know, like I have a real fascination with eating rinds, and I feel like even when I go into the paste, I'm eating rind. And I'm getting, you know, mushroom and kind of like those kind of musty notes and everything that mold, you know, is. And I don't think that's particularly pleasant. And I think it would just be a very select audience who enjoy this type of cheese. And I would struggle to see how I would maybe, like, you know, do I develop it on? Do I develop lighter? You know, is it just the milk type, or is it just situational that one make tastes like this? So I struggle to provide any kind of critical feedback with getting it beyond that, I suppose.
So in terms of the flavor, I might be like a 5.
Yeah, I think I might be a 4, so 4.5.
4.5.
Because I it's not particularly unpleasant, but yeah, it's not. It's really just not doing anything for me. Really. Yeah,
it is quite locked in for a blue cheese. I agree. And then the texturally, I think it's maybe a little bit, it's not faulty. I would put it maybe a little higher than a 4.5, but not as a standout, enjoyable, creamy texture. Maybe a 5.5.
Yeah, perfect.
So 5.5 for texture, guys, and 4.5 for flavor.
Yeah.
Sarah, we were just saying that we're probably like the harshest group of judges you have in this entire competition. So everybody needs to take our scores and adjust them by whatever factor brings us in line with the other judges. But hopefully, if the goal is to come up with a winner, we'll still be, you know, we'll select, we'll arrive at the destination.
So I guess what I would say is that you're actually judging every cheese on its own merits equally. So it doesn't matter what your scoring range is, it will be aligned to every cheese will be under your tough scrutiny, but also with your expertise, advice on top of that. So it works both ways.
Okay, yeah. And if anyone feels they need to add a curve to their score, I would encourage them to feel free.
But it's not about the score, it's about
the actual feedback.
The order, but also the feedback. You know, the advice and the feedback.
Well, hopefully we're performing all right.
Very lucky to have you guys. So I don't think I'd said the number of this cheese. Hopefully it is C21100.
1100. Yeah. Perry's way ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, Perry, can you just show us all?
Oh yes, of course. Yeah. There you go. So yeah, some mold, a more shallower cheese rather than like a sort of top hat kind of Stilton that's in there. Obviously the ironing has happened downwards from the top, which I think is, yeah, that's there. The coverage, I'm going to have to cut into it, is once again, you know, kind of inconsistent that I can see on there. And yeah, the bluing is quite nice, once again, quite heavy on the bottom. That could be due to packaging, you know, like that's that kind of issue that we've got to deal with as judges. But yeah, a real kind of blue mold that's kind of developing that's in there. But I feel like it wouldn't draw my eyes to it pretty massively in terms of if it was sitting in a deli counter.
It would.
It wouldn't for me.
It would not. Yeah.
It would not. It would get lost.
Again, this comment about the tight paste, the dominance of those piercing lines right there makes me it gives me pause about whether that's actually what they were setting out for, or whether they didn't get their curds, you know, firm enough before they went into those molds to leave the spaces. You know, there's some little flecks of blue here, but it does have a little bit of a Cambozola vibe in a cheese that I don't think is trying to be that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah, like a 6.5 doesn't blow me away, you know, in terms of its presence. If it was in a counter, would it get lost? Probably. Standing next to these big Stiltons with big blue veins in them. So yeah, that's where I'd sit on.
6.
Yeah.
And then aromatically?
Yeah, we got that kind of aged blue that's in there that I'm getting.
Sort of dairy, you know, it's so funny because the blue is such a, you know, such a powerful but such a consistent element amongst a lot of these cheeses. A lot of them feel to me to be ending up in very similar territory. Like there's not a lot between them, and I feel like what I'm missing is like the flavor of the cheese. I'm just getting a lot of like normal blue smell, which is fine. But, you know, to what extent, at what point do we start knocking things down for just not delivering anything more than the flavor of the blue that's been added to it?
Yeah, it is very typical blue aromas. And the variation that we're getting is the typical, you know, and in terms of if you were going to buy this cheese just by aroma alone, it would get lost. And yeah, it's very typical blue. This one has a little bit more kind of, you know, hay, heat, maybe savory to it in terms of blue, but the overarching is that bitter blue kind of area. So yeah, so I think like a 6 in that area. Yeah.
I know what I was going to say. Yeah. Fine, but unremarkable, perhaps. You know.
Yeah.
Remember, just do your flavor and texture together again.
Yep. Whereas I feel like that improves on tasting. For me, there's a refreshment there. It's a little young, a little bit, you know, it feels like it's not quite fully mature. There's still a kind of acid backbone there that I feel like maybe sits at odds slightly with its identity as the blue cheese, unless they're looking for something quite fresh and lactic. But it has a sort of vitality to the flavor that I feel like I've been missing in some of the ones that just taste like they're a little bit tired. So yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I like the way the texture seems to enhance the flavor for me. There's like two things that go on. It's very creamy up front, you know, and it becomes like blue pronounced rolling into the bitters, and then it just kind of dries out the palate immediately, and you get more kind of a savory edge that's in there, more broader.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I quite like it for that, to be honest. I wouldn't, like I said, I wouldn't say it's outstanding or, you know, but I think that's on flavor and texture. I think it kind of roughly delivers. Yeah.
It delivers something a little bit different than what we've had before, with like so far this morning, which I think it's good. So what do you think? Texture, maybe like a 7, 6.5? Yeah. 7?
Yeah, I was going to go 6.5. So if you just,
let's go 6.5. I think it's firm, maybe, but again, with the way the blue is behaving, let's downgrade it slightly. Bit too dense, bit too together, but good. And then the flavor, yeah, I would say another 7, maybe.
Perfect.
Thank you, guys.
Lovely.
The next song we're looking for is C21052.
Square.
Wow.
Okay. Ooh.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Kind of halloumi blue. I think that's just a shape that it feels like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely got the barest rind of anything that we've tried yet. My guess is that they're probably using some sort of mold inhibitor like natamycin on that to give that finish. And so that's, that's entirely a choice of the cheesemaker. And I'm not sure I would, grade it up or knock it down for that. The square is, it jumps out at you. Interesting to think how a square would behave differently than a circle, than a cylinder, when it comes to ripening. And
it seems just surprisingly even in terms of the gradient that's going through the cheese on the paste, which is quite interesting. On my piece, I'm guessing they're from the same block. So it's interesting to see how that development happens quite evenly on the outside. I think it's interesting and would draw the eye to people because it being a square amongst, in a counter. I don't know, personally, if that's for me, but I think it's interesting enough, and it seems even enough. 6.5.
I'm with you on that. Let's say 6.5.
It's a difficult one to judge because there is a lot of personal preference with this, but yeah.
I mean, for a heart shape, I might downgrade it because that's the thing, but a square, it's interesting. It's noteworthy. We're talking about it. 6.5. Kudos.
And for aroma, guys?
Aroma, unfortunately, I'm getting literally next to nothing. There's a faint blue, but it's more water, I suppose, how water would smell. Unfortunately, you're in a scenario where you're having to grade aroma and there is a severe lack of one within this cheese. So I would go for about a 3, not because it's unpleasant, just purely because it's devoid.
I mean, I was going to say 4. Again, it's not bad. I guess if it were bad, I might go for 3, but it's not bad. It's just just blue.
Yeah, let's go 4. But yeah, that's fine by me. It's just trying to work out, if there's a lack of is that bad? But yeah, 4 is
no. We could we could chat all day, and I still think we wouldn't come to an opinion. But yeah, no, I'm there with your sentiment. I agree.
Okay, guys. So texture and flavor.
Wow, that's salty. Woo. Is yours super salty?
Yeah. I'm leaning more into this halloumi blue idea.
I don't know if it's the power of suggestion, but when I was cutting, I was like, wow, this feels really rubbery. I think it might be the power of suggestion, but there is very, it's a very curdy, dense, kind of almost, it's not quite squeaky textured, but there is something reminiscent of halloumi. And I'm not sure that those are the aspects of a cheese that I think go particularly well with blue. It's a bit of an enigma.
It's quite powerful, and that saltiness is way too high. People who like salty cheese will love it, but it is drowning out anything that cheese can be. And it's a lover for a real salty cheese. So I would be around a 4 on the flavor for me, because there is a clear problem with the salt element that's in there, and that may be desirable by the cheesemaker for certain people who like salty cheese, but unfortunately it's inhibiting anything else that the cheese could be. Texturally, I actually think it's okay. I think
the firmness of it is not bad in itself, and also, despite the fact that it's so firm, it does have a pretty nice even distribution of blue. Again, I bet there's some gas formers involved in that, but it's delivering the texture to make it a blue cheese. So yeah, I'd probably rank it a little higher. It's a bit hard work, I guess, is the only thing between the saltiness and between that kind of chewiness. It's just not giving me a blue experience. So yeah. I think I'm totally with you on 4 for the flavor. I think texture wise, 5.
Yep. Yeah, I always love doing that when I judge with Braun, just like getting my mark in there, and then like,
no, absolutely,
is it going? Yes,
group effort.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, that's interesting. That is, yeah.
Yeah, it's really. I've seen some new things this morning.
Brilliant. So next one is C21056, guys.
1056.
Okay.
Oh, looks like a Roquefort.
Yeah.
Wow.
Look at that. I mean, appearance-wise, that feels very textbook for a very particular style of cheese. I mean, you can see the gas bubbles. You can see a little piercing there, but it looks, you know, I don't know. What do you think, Perry?
Yeah, I think it. Yeah, you're bang on kind of like what it's trying to be, and I think they purely achieve it in terms of, does it require a little bit more character, maybe, in terms of the kind of, obviously, yeah, yeah. I mean, 7.5.
Let's do 7. Let's do
Yeah.
7. You know, maybe a little bit more blue than I would naturally personally gravitate for, but I'm not sure that I would define that as a fall. So let's go 7. All right, aroma. Smells blue again. It's a hard one. Like
it's got similarities that I know we shouldn't compare, but we're trying to adjust our palettes being in 2 separate areas. It's got similarities in terms of that devoidness that we had in the previous cheese, but it's more than that.
It's just, to me, it has a little bit of like a slightly tired smell. It's not ammoniated, yes, but it's a little dull. So yeah, I might say like aroma 5.
Yep. I like that term, tired, actually. Yeah.
Let's see. And then we're doing texture and flavor together.
Please.
Yeah. Got more going on there in terms of flavor. Texture is quite nice, actually. I'm thinking I need more of that. Slightly ammoniated towards the end, which is a little bit kind of like challenging, but not in like a way that would just floor the cheese.
I feel like maybe I got a pocket of this, but mine is quite like, there are bits of blue, like a sort of sandiness that's coating my tongue. I agree with you. The flavor is giving more than the aroma, but I'm just getting a little bit of slight grittiness, kind of on the nerdle spectrum, where to me it's a little bit distracting from my enjoyment of it. But let me find a different place on the cheese, so I get a second.
I didn't get it on the first bite. I got a little bit on the second, and more towards the rind. I seem to be getting more for what's that word. So yeah, texturally, it's not quite delivering for me in a terms of a slightly more negative spectrum. I would be around about a 4 texturally. Flavor, I quite enjoy it, actually. There's more going on there. You know, there's that challenging element, that the kind of ammoniated kind of, you know, what kind of cribralis does to people. It's got that kind of element in it. Yeah. So but you know, but not flawless, not kind of like pushing the boundaries too much, being very atypical of the cheese that we were thinking that this might be related to.
Totally, like it's not a Roquefort.
Yeah.
I put my name down right now and say it's definitely not a Roquefort. I agree with you. I'm like, I think 4 on texture would work for me. It's just a little bit distracting, those leafy bits that are left on my tongue, and I'm getting it more in some places than others. But overall, I think from a flavor perspective, I agree. It's a bit more interesting. I find it still on the high side in terms of salt, just from a flavor perspective. The salt's dominating the flavor a little bit. I think a little less might like just help the rest of it come out. But I would give it a higher score. What did you suggest on the flavor side?
I think I went 6.5 or 7. I think I was near.
No, let's go 6.5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 more to go. So we're going to need to
taste.
Yeah.
Pick up the taste.
Pick
All
up.
right.
So we're on C21040.
1040. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Right.
Okay. A nice little more funkier cheese, a little bit more character in there. Good little kind of oval shape there it has. Nice kind of interesting rind, which is a little bit more peachy, a little bit more inconsistent, but I think that's part of the cheesemaker's character, and to be too refined probably wouldn't help it out as much. Yeah, I really like it, to be honest. It looks fun.
A little paving stone. I like the way it's a bit crinkly and a bit sort of, yeah, it's characterful. It looks like the packaging hasn't been super nice to it. It's a little bit clammy, but let's not knock it down too much just for the way it was packaged. I don't know. What do you think? 7?
Yeah, I think 7.5. I think it's just interesting and intrigues me and would draw the eye to it. I like the color of the blue. We're in that
7.5. Yeah. I'm attracted. All right. Let's see. Aroma?
Pretty funky, to be fair.
Yeah, pretty funky. It's got the, you know, I think that's probably going to be quite full on.
Yeah. Funky, kind of in that fermented pear kind of cider kind of area that's there.
Fruity ketos. Yeah, but interesting. I'm not just smelling kind of blue mold. I'm smelling cheese breakdown and the flavors associated with that. I would give that a pretty high score in terms of aroma as well. What do you think? Again,
I think, yeah, spot on. Yeah, I think it's just more interesting, more funky, and there's more behind that. But the prevailing factor is fermented cider kind of area. Yeah.
Interesting. Texture. I like it. I think that the blue is not too rough on my tongue. You know, it's a nice, smooth eating experience. I think the rind to paste ratio is a little high. You know, there's a lot of rind on there. And I think, you know, I'm not sure I'd eat the rind, but it feels like maybe if the cheese were a little deeper, but could still kind of get that same kind of texture and breakdown, I think I might prefer that. Also, if you look right under the rind here, there's a sort of like highly broken down, but sort of discolored and slightly, sometimes I call it composted, but like extreme breakdown. It just looks, whether that's like not turning it quite enough or whether there's just something a little bit like past it, that rind.
Yeah, I was going to say precisely the same thing. I actually quite like the texture. I think like texturally it's like really heavy and thick set, like some kind of thick set cream.
I was going to say
there. Yeah, like some nice clotted cream type thing. So I'm all there for the texture. But, you know, it's slightly uneven, but I think that's where it's probably just quite thin. So you're having a larger portion and it kind of overrides that kind of. But yeah, I agree. Either, you know, a kind of a turning issue that's kind of happening there, or what it's potentially sitting on, maybe a little bit inconsistent. So texturally, I really like it. I'm 8. Yeah. Did you say 8? Yeah, which is good. Flavor wise, that funkiness is really coming in. That ammonia is really taking over. It's pretty aggressive.
There's an element of heat to it, like a slight bile that, you know, is not necessarily to me a natural blue flavor. I don't know if that suggests maybe some fat damage or something else that's going on that is giving it just a tiny bit of sickiness. That for me detracts from the overall, because there are a lot of things about this cheese I really like, but I think I downgrade it for that slight kind of bile flavor.
Yeah, I think I'd be sitting around about a 6.5 on flavor. Yeah. There's elements that I really like in that cheese, and I think, you know, I'd love to know who makes it. If it's maybe a relatively slightly newer cheese maker, a little bit more kind of inconsistent batches and things like that, but yeah, I think that's a nice cheese that's got a lot of potential, I think.
Yeah.
Right. Next cheese we're looking for, guys, is C21034.
Lovely. Ooh. Well, if that other one was a Roquefort, this is a Gorgonzola, right?
Yeah.
Wow, look at those, like the texture of that is quite something. I'm not going to try to take it off of its
yeah. Yeah, I mean that's
Could one of you just tilt it slightly so we
I
can
can do
see
that.
that?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's
So yeah.
I'm not sure if you can see like there's a real wave flex thing going on with that. It feels like it might, as a cheesemonger, might be a hard one to like cut for someone. I wouldn't want to pick that up repeatedly off of the
quite a gooey texture.
Yeah, very soft.
Yeah, it's like you know, it's kind of in between, you know, a typical gorgonzola and then, you know, obviously a scoopable one. It's somewhere kind of like in the middle of there. And the rind isn't particularly established. It's a little bit wavy on the rind outside, but I think that's packaging, cling film, time, being a high moisture cheese, which won't mark it down for, but the bluing is consistent in there. I think if I saw this in a counter, I'm imagining it whole, I would be very like, I want that. Unctuous textures tend to sell more. So I'm appearance, I'm around about an 8 for it.
I agree. I think it's pretty textbook. I really like the look of the rind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's kind of like clouds, pillowy, isn't it? You know, that kind of, yeah. Yeah, and texture-wise, I mean...
Super creamy, super glossy.
Yeah, there's something really masterful about being able to create such a silky, smooth texture on cut and things like that. That kind of really pay off. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead, but
I think aromatically it's nice. It's got I mean, you're definitely smelling it's a blue cheese, even though it's not massively blue in the way it looks. I think it's a nice aroma. There's more than one note there. I mean, I don't know, 7?
Yeah, 7. I'm happy with 7. Yeah, it's very clean, very easygoing. So and really pleasant, but nothing to offend you, which is good.
Great. So yeah, texture, let's see. Well, for people looking for a creamy blue cheese, I feel like that would probably be a crowd pleaser.
Yeah.
If there's something almost gelatinous about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's yeah, there's something, it's nice how it kind of gets caught between your gums, but also washes away really quickly. It's very filling, actually.
Yeah, it's rich. It's like rich,
yeah.
Light. I mean, as a technical exercise, that's pretty impressive. I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of, like I was saying, kind of like getting in that middle ground of where it is a bit of a marvel, to be fair. So yeah, I texturally, I think it's a 9.
I agree with you. I think in terms of delivering that texture in that size of a cheese, you know, with that much blue actually in it, I'm 9. Yeah, absolutely. Flavor wise, it's like, it's rich, it's warm, but it's not like knocking my socks off.
Yeah. I think that's the thing. It's not bad. It's pretty good, I think. But when you're showing, you know, this unctuous, beautiful kind of like cheese, you're anticipating so much more from that flavor that's going to come through, and it's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll put it about 7.5 or 7. Yeah.
Let's go 7.5. Yeah. I think it's doing what it set out to do and doing it very, very impressively. And yeah, I do want more from the flavor. That would really kind of take it to the next level.
Yeah, that would be unbelievable. And I'm sure that cheese would do that on another batch, you know, and yeah.
Yeah, no.
I'd like to feel a little bit more salt in that, I think.
Yeah, you know, I know where you're coming from. The more salt, a little bit more of the acidity, you know, the present on your tongue. Yeah. All right, what's next?
Next one we have is C21025.
All right. Little camembert shape. Well, not camembert, I should say brie.
Interesting. There's a lot going on there. It's got like this nice stony rind with a little bit of peachiness in there that's there. So we might get that element of funkiness that comes through. Like a thick rind that's actually quite really well established. And the bluing is intentionally kind of like, I feel like it's intentionally like splattered, not over kind of in there. And yeah, I mean, the milk color is quite, I think, nice and dark and kind of looks
lovely
rich.
yellow. I completely agree. And I agree. It looks like a kind of rustic pebble kind of thing. I like the undercoat of pink. It looks a little rough around the edges. If I'm gonna say, like, I'm gonna be absolutely frank, but I think there's a characterfulness to it that I like. So I might say like a 7.
Yeah, it's got like that. I just really like that kind of sediment kind of color, right? You know, the kind of that's coming through, which is good.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a look. See.
Oh yeah, ammonia.
Yeah, it's like I don't even smell the blue. I just get a really punchy whiff of ammonia. I think I might have to knock it down aromatically for that, because it's out. It's like drowning out all the other. 4.
Yeah, there's I'd maybe go to 3, because I'm you know, I'm really struggling to get anything else. And, you know, there are people that love ammoniated cheeses and that's what they go for. But in terms of a judging, that's way too powerful.
Yeah. Okay. 3. That's fine with me.
I'm concerned for the
for what's to come.
for the next cheeses after this one.
Okay. So texture and flavor.
And weirdly, there was no need to be.
That's a surprise.
So interesting.
Because still, like, just even bringing it close to my nose, I'm like, whoa, ammonia. And I was expecting something really untastable almost. There's a sweetness there. There's a richness. I want to say, I think this comes from like interesting milk. I think the raw material for this feels like it's shining through despite all of these like impediments that have been put on top of it in terms of the aging and the slight suffocation and the extreme breakdown and everything. There's still a core of something that's really interesting shining through.
That's fantastic. That's the most interesting position to have such an ammoniated cheese and have very kind of trace elements of it actually in the flavor.
I don't think I've ever experienced that before.
No, I don't think I've had that kind of thing, which is fascinating to me. Which would be really, well, I mean, saying that there's people that would go out for, you know, finding the most ammoniated cheese they could do. Would they be let down by not?
But their spouse, who maybe isn't into that, might say like, oh, this is the best cheese ever. So, you know, it's something for everyone. It's like really, really interesting. I like the texture.
Yes.
It's that slightly gelatinous, but quite rich, custardy kind of thing going on.
Flaggy, thick set. It distributes well across the mouth. Good mouthfeel, really. To be honest, it's I'd 7.58 on texture for me.
Yeah.
And flavor, I'm kind of in the same area.
Yeah, I would say texture. Let's go 7. Yeah, let's go 7.5, just because the rind texture isn't great and it's a lot of the cheese. So let's go 7.5. And then flavor. Yeah, there's a sweetness. It's not bitter. I was terrified it was going to be bitter, but actually it's not. It's like round. I do feel that on some level, aromatically, the ammonia is drowning something out. And if that could be stripped away, it would really have the capacity to be phenomenal. But I wonder, like, flavor. 7.5 again? I don't know.
Yeah, let's go 7.5, because I think you're right about the it would take longer to work out how that ammoniated kind of level is impeding some of those really great notes that might be in there. I totally agree with the milk or the way that this cheese was made is really shining through and like come to save the day. That's really, really intriguing, and I can't wait to take this out and show my team.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this to me, this is a very frustrating cheese because it could be like next level phenomenal, and it just slightly misses the mark, but really interesting.
Yeah, really great potential on that. And I think if you had that cheese whole in a counter, like that pebble kind of sediment color is just really unique, and I like it a lot.
All right, what's
next? Next one we're moving on to is 1023.
There we are.
How are you doing, Cara? Are you okay?
I'm so jealous.
Wish we could pass some of these right through the screen to you.
Yeah, I'm actually salivating at the last two. So
that one's so intriguing, that last one.
It looked it.
Very, very thought-provoking. All right, here's a
kind of like a blue Tom, or
yeah. No, it's not. I like the rind, actually. I like the kind of frosted rind. It looks like the first cheese we've had that has a really kind of sensibly grown on integral rind, which I gotta give it some kudos for.
Yeah, definitely. It's nice to see that thick set, that thin line that's going in there, a little bit of character with the bumpiness, a little bit of crowning, you know, maybe uneven on each side, but hey, this has got a little bit more character to it, and, you know, sort of unevenness should be rewarded when we're seeing character within cheese.
Totally. Bright paste. I mean, not too blue, but not blue, and pretty evenly distributed what's there. I like the look of this.
Yeah, for the sense that I'm getting in terms of like a blue Tom or something of that nature, I think the paste is kind of pretty, you know, I'll see if that comes through in aroma and flavor. I think it's pretty much that paste is what I would expect from that profile. Yeah. So 8?
Yeah, see, there we are, perfectly aligned.
Yeah.
As ever.
After the first 100, that really gets much easier.
That's, yeah, really funky on the aroma, not too overpowering. It's got that kind of winey,
pear droppy.
Pear droppy. I love pear drops.
It's a lot of thing, but it does tend to come up again and again in blue cheese.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it.
Yeah. 8?
Yep. Yep. Texture is going to be interesting, I think. Interesting.
Quite dense.
Yeah.
It's broken down. It doesn't have that kind of curdiness or the flakiness, but it's very, very tightly knit, and it's sort of
a chew to it almost, hasn't it?
Yeah. You gotta work at it, but then it dissolves into something that's quite quite fine.
I like that. I think I've been more impressed by the aroma, the appearance, than I have so much the texture. So I would put it around about 7.5.
Yeah, let's give it a 7. I agree. Yeah. Texture, I'd like it just to be a little silkier, a little bit like more buttery.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's certainly up there.
I like the flavor. It's got some real individual character to it.
Yeah, it feels like a different profile. There's a lot more kind of like grapey, almost like a different fruits coming out in that.
It feels like a single variety of something. Like it feels like I'd love to write down who it is to find out who the cheesemaker is, because it feels like just something that's different all the time, and I like where it is currently.
And it feels very polished. I would, if you were to say like a wine, it would be almost like an Aussie Shiraz. Like it's juicy, it's kind of easy. It's not, it's not challenging, but it's very polished, I think. And it has a nice rustic look, so it's not like industrial kind of character flattened out.
So somebody who doesn't really is scared of blue cheeses, which a lot of the public are, would that be something that would appeal to them, do you think?
I think it's quite approachable. Yeah. I mean, what do you think, Perry?
Yeah, I think it's a, it's a bit of a kind of, who knows? It's a bit of a curveball, really, because it doesn't sit into kind of those blue areas that people would. I think you would have to sit in a counter with a good cheesemonger who engages with you and goes, this is going to be different than anything that you had. Because I think the journey, the outcome, which is someone who hates blue, doesn't like that, may be the same with this one, because it is in that area where that fruit kind of pear drop thing actually does deliver, but it is quite challenging if you don't like that category of flavor, where something like this one that we had, the soft, would be, I think, far more pleasing in terms of people approaching that category.
Yeah, I completely agree. So it's not at the center of the category, but actually in terms of what it does, it's an interesting sort of diversity adder to the mix. What do you think in terms of flavor?
Cool. It's difficult. I just I really like it because I just get this sense that is this cheese going to be like this on another batch? It feels very individual to me, and it feels like yeah. And I like it, so I'll go 7.5 to 8.
Great. Let's go. Yeah, let's go 7.5. I think it's really good.
Yeah.
Cool.
Great, guys. Sorry.
Yeah.
The next one we're going with is 1007.
1007. Here we go. This little guy.
Looks well wrapped.
Very well wrapped. Here we go.
But intriguing.
It is. Wow.
Yeah.
Bronwyn, can you show it to the camera a little bit for me?
I'm struggling.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You can see there's a little moisture on the top. The top molds look like they've been sort of wetted a little bit, and there's a bit of a pink hue underneath it, and a lot of what looks like geo. It's it's a bit of an omni rind, I would say.
There's a character developing with these stony cheeses. And I think you're totally right with the quality of the milk. I'm thinking, I'd like to obviously take a look, but there just seems to be, the coloration that's in there, the breakdown, the fact that I feel like I'm visually seeing, that's hard to describe. It's got to be Jersey or some, a real rich milk set. And I am harking back to the ammoniated cheese, the difference.
Yeah.
I would think that we're in that kind of region now.
Yeah. It's interesting, like
buttery.
It's very creamy. There's a lot of breakdown underneath the rind. It's pretty advanced, I would say. I do think from an appearance perspective, and maybe the only place to put a comment about the format, there's an awful lot of a rind that I'm not super keen to eat as a component of this cheese. Like, I would be a little shy of, not like just from a flavor perspective, chowing down on that rind, maybe a bit past it. And you're getting a lot of that for every 200 grams of this cheese you're getting. So what do you think? Like, I would maybe say a 6.
Yeah,
Too hard.
I would maybe go like 6.5, just purely because the interesting element that it like visually has for me. Like, I find it very engaging in terms of being a small little kind of like blue croton kind of like style. The geo's there. The breakdown may be uneven, but I think that's going to deliver when it's actually on. Yeah, so I'd go just a 0.5 higher if that's okay.
With that 6.5, and then moving on to aroma. Yeah, it's not as ammoniated as I was fearing it might be, given the way the rind was looking and the extent of the breakdown underneath it. Yeah, quite dairy.
Yeah, just quite fresh, easygoing, a little bit kind of like alkaline kind of nature to it.
Like a 7?
Like a 7? Yeah.
Yeah.
I want some.
You should get your own set as the moderator, Cara.
I agree.
I think for people who really like the kind of glossy, silky, creamy cheese, I think that's gonna tick a lot of boxes for them. To my mind, it's just it's a little bit. My feeling is if you put that out on a cheese board in a warm room, it would start to flow. Whether that's a fault or an attribute is in the eye of the beholder, I suppose. But
yeah, I think that flow would be fairly inconsistent.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a chunk within the middle of the cheese that's not broken down, and strangely enough, around the blue, or maybe the blue is holding it together. There is an inconsistency, like a mosaic on the inside.
The degree of airflow, positioning, kind of problems that are potentially going on there, and yeah, I would gather this would be a small artisan cheesemaker, and maybe doesn't have that luxury of big kind of like manufacturing and all that kind of equipment. Yes, which but yeah, in terms of texture, I think it's okay.
Yeah,
I think it's okay to good. So I think 6 for texture. The inconsistencies, they need to look at that. And then in terms of flavor, like you said, I think it's a targeted audience. But maybe I am that target because I quite like it.
Yeah, it's got cheese flavor, which I think with any of the blue cheeses, having some cheese flavor mixed into that is key. So yeah, let's grade it up for flavor. It's not, for me, it's not the most, like, I don't know. It's a bit of a strange one, but maybe this is, what were you going to say, like 7?
Yeah, I think like 7 point. What I'd just love to say is that kind of gloopy area is just so nice. That breakdown that's happened there, you've got some real thick aged beef meat kind of vibe that's in there, which is amazing.
Yeah. There's a savory cheese flavor layer. So yeah, I'm happy with 7 on that. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Perfect.
Lovely. Okay.
Guys.
Well, what's next?
Next we have 1219. And I seriously want to try that one that you're just wrapping up there.
Straight through to you.
Yeah.
You want me to send it to you, Cara? Can you do that? Or is that...
No, you're all right, Perry. You enjoy it.
I've got a lot to enjoy.
I'll find out what it is and I'll buy myself some.
Okay. Another firmer cheese, I would say. When the, it's quite solid.
It's very solid. And I worry that rind would be rubbery and like flake and stick there, kind of what's in there. Yeah, I mean, that's well established on the outside. I think, there's the bluing is subtle. I think it's just devoid of maybe some character and elements. I think it's a well-made cheese.
It looks like it's set out to do what it is trying to do. The rind is in actually quite nice shape. It's not sticky or tacky. It feels like a much more stable interpretation of blue than a lot of what we've been looking at. Will it follow through with a kind of inertness of flavor? That would be my concern, but we'll find out. What would you say for that? Like a 6.5?
Yeah.
Visual Harry?
Yeah, like a 6.5, yeah.
It is quite firm. And again,
very firm.
It can be firm. It does impact the way the blue grows on the inside. Again, you can see that piercing line, very dense. You're getting a lot of the blue along that. although there are some air pockets. Aromatically, it's quite mushroomy, but it's maybe a little bit heavy aromatically, a little tiny bit dull.
It's not, you know, yeah, it is, and it's not particularly powerful, unpleasant, but there's, yeah, I mean, I'll be at about a 6.5 on this one.
Yep.
Just because there's elements that are really working with it on the aroma, and it has got a bit of power for such a firm cheese, actually.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
And actually, having just tasted it, I think it's quite interesting. I don't want to get too far ahead of you, but like I said, it smelled mushroomy. It has an incredibly strong kind of like shiitake mushroom, deglazed pan kind of savoriness.
Very good. Sorry, that sounds really. I was like thinking about that.
Be a little bit more specific, bro.
Yeah, well, it is absolutely bang on, because I was thinking exactly the same. Mushrooms, and then I went to caramel, because there's that kind of like that kind of that kind of deglazing a pan kind of vibe, and then obviously you went into, so yeah, that was absolutely spot on to what that cheese tastes like. So yeah, and I really like it.
I'm like surprised by how much I like that. I feel like it's totally redeemed itself in the flavor. It's super interesting. And so like texturally, I guess I'm not going to mark it down so much, because it is broken down. It's not curdy. It's pretty continuous. And the flavor is super unique and interesting and like different than anything we've tried. I'm, you know, I wasn't quite sure about this one, but I quite like it.
Yeah, so do I actually. I think that kind of, I like the you know, the complexity of getting mushroomy into a cheese that is blue without kind of a strong bitter element is really, really difficult. And this is so refined in terms of that mushroom, you know, deglazed pan kind of like area, you know, dehydrated mushrooms and rehydrating them.
Like
that aroma.
The dried Chinese ones that you would then,
yes, yeah, like septo, yeah, totally.
Really
love it.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow, what are we going to give it for texture and flavor then, guys?
Trivia along. Let's say texture. I mean, I think texture is 7. It's,
okay.
It's good, but like, but the flavor, I would give it like, I don't know. What do you think? 8.5? 9?
Go for a 9. I think that element of mushroom is so it's so difficult to pull off in cheeses, and to, you know, in this individual cheese to have that element be so pronounced. I think it, yeah, well done. I mean, that's really good.
I'm very impressed with that. Absolutely. Cool.
Well done, guys.
All right. Are we on the home stretch?
We're on the home stretch. 2 more to go. So the next one is 1215.
1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 5. Yeah. Going for a biscuit, Perry?
Oh, I was thinking about just having a little corner. Promo period, Cara. This is
Lottie Shaw's an amazing bakery up north, and her biscuits basically pair absolutely beautifully with blue cheese. The ones that you have been specially done for us, so they're very neutral, but they do a fantastic range that pair beautifully with blue.
They're phenomenal.
Thank you. I will tell Lottie you said so.
Like real, to be honest, I don't particularly like ginger biscuits, but there's a real severe level of crunch to them. They're really good. Good work. Oh, what are we on? Sorry.
So we are on C21215, Perry.
Dangerously close to a Moorish cookie.
Ooh.
Yeah.
See the attraction for blue cheese for sure. All right. Oh, this is an interesting looking one.
Ooh, okay.
Clean, nice, like thin rind that's on there, you know, and that looks more established than some of the previous that we've had. Good covering of blue, nice kind of like pudginess, which is fun. Yeah, I think that's really, really pleasant cheese. I think it's pretty good appearance-wise.
Beautiful. Like the rind is beautiful. I mean, appearance-wise, I give that a 9. I think it looks great.
Yeah, I'll go like 8.5. Is that okay?
8.5. Okay, let's do 8.5. I just think
Harry.
Look at that, like lovely broken down sheen, but like coupled with this very lovely, stable. Like as a cheesemonger, I'm not afraid to pick that up. It's not going to gum up my works. It's like just right. All right, 8.5. Let's see.
Aroma, guys.
Themselves. Not a huge amount. It's a bit ammoniated. There's like a bit of ammonia. It's not super heavy ammonia, but I'm not.
There's like a background of a little bit kind of like stocky kind of thing, but the kind of the prevailing blue flavor it is there, and it's front facing and it's hiding quite a lot. I'd go like a 6.5, something like that.
That sounds good to me. I'm happy with 6.5.
Yeah.
Wow.
Texture.
Very dense. Huh?
Yeah. But I quite like that. It's dense and equally light once it dissipates.
Yeah, it's like it's not hard. It's just like packed together very smoothly. I like the texture.
Yes, I agree.
Like a 7 and a half.
Yeah, 7.5. That's where I was going to go. So yeah,
Flavor, I'm not quite so into it. To me, there's a kind of metallic, slightly rasping astringency that's left on my tongue.
Yep.
And the flavor, it feels like that's kind of masking the flavor for me. It's quite bitter, but there's something quite astringent there that's not my favorite.
Yeah, it struggles to get beyond that astringency that's there. It really does. And unfortunately, there's not much more that's going on there. Like we said previously, there is a lot of people that like that bitter note within their cheeses, and that would be perfectly suited them, but it's kind of an inhibitor to anything else going on. I would put this around about 4.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's a shame because it's like there's so much about that that's like, but just the flavor. If the flavor could live up to the rest of that, I think it would be quite an impressive cheese.
So how did they tweak that then, guys?
Ollie,
that's unfortunately that is an overall process. For me, there is not, because the texture's there. You can't add any age to that. The mold development seems to be there. I think you would probably just have to take a look at the process as a whole.
I kind of agree. It feels like extra ripening or selling it younger, any of that stuff isn't going to make the difference. You might look at starters. I wonder if some of that locked in flavor is a result of the wrong, cultures that don't have the toolkit of enzymes that are going to like cut down the proteins in a way that it releases more flavor. Because so unfortunately, that's about where my ability to sort of suggest tops out. But looking at something.
There may be
feedback in the limited time we have, guys. So
there may be a little kind of shot in the dark here. I hang my hat on something again, but maybe vegetarian rennet. There's something that's kind of it's got so much better over the years, vegetarian rennet, to be honest. But I just remember when I started out 12 years ago, I would be able to tell the difference. And now thinking about that, maybe that's there. It may not be,
No, I think that's a really interesting one, particularly if it's like a microbial rennet as opposed to a fermentation-produced chymosin. Sometimes those enzymes are not particularly good at doing the ripening functions of rennet as opposed to the curd setting functions of rennet. And so, that might be a really good place to look at that kind of metallic bitterness. An idea.
Nice, brilliant feedback. And on to our final.
But if it was vegetarian rennet, if it wasn't, then disregard
everything. No, and I'll be right there. I'll put my initials on that one as well. Like.
Okay, on to C2118, guys.
Here we are. Last but not least.
Last but definitely not least.
Ooh, kind of red rinded number.
Interesting.
Does look interesting.
Always difficult to judge these backpacks a little bit, to be honest. I think, judging here and other places, I do have a thing with backpacking and how that can create a detectable kind of like blight in the cheese. causing that whey to lock in. You know, temperatures change, it sweats, second whey comes out, it's on the top of the cheese. So they do this kind of like packaging is more difficult to judge and separate that.
I totally agree. It has definitely affected this cheese. Yeah, I'd love to see a piece of this fresh cut. The extent to which the rind is kind of basted in its own juices, is that like part of the cheese, or is that an artifact of the way it's been wrapped? And also, it's kind of hard to see the curd structure on that cut surface. So I'm just going to kind of cut across here.
Yeah, that's.
Which actually, you know, on that freshly cut surface, I think it looks a lot better than it does.
Let's judge it on that cut then, guys.
Okay. Yeah, it's not the bluest blue. It's a little bit of like a brown blue.
It's like swampy, isn't it? You know, and I'm sorry, that's not like.
It's not a judgy word. It's just I know what you're saying. There's something a little bit brown about it. And I wonder again whether that's not the cheese. That's just the way it's been handled. It's really difficult to tell. I think appearance-wise, I might give it like a 6.
A 6 because I think at this stage we may have to readdress it, but it's very difficult to work out where this is. I'm seeing like sort of nuggets of this kind of vibrant lime, you know, green that's in there, and then kind of like this peppering of pinkish reddish that's coming in, and I'm trying to work out where I sit on that, if that's yeah. Aroma, it's very kind of pungent and briny, and
kind of savory, but not like massive jump out at you, I would say, particularly given all of briny is it's like a little bit sort of seashore-y kind of thing going on, like the docks. I think aromatically, I would give it another 5. I'm not like, it's not a particularly, it's not drawing me in.
Yeah. I think this one becomes very difficult to judge because at this point, I normally you can kind of separate that, but I feel like that either it was intentional or it wasn't, but it's kind of been washed in itself. It's actually become very on flavor, kind of like stinky gym bag, smelly socks, kind of, you know, that kind of area that's in there. Texturally, there's a little bit kind of given. I'll go like 5. You know, aroma, I'd be around about sort of like 4, 5, and flavor, I'd be around about 4.
I'm with you on all counts. I think that's a fair assessment. And again, I'd love to see this cheese in better condition, but it's hard to give it a higher score than those based on what we're seeing in front of us right now.
Okay, so I don't think we actually gave it a visual score.
Oh, okay. Yes, I think about a 4.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got 4 for visual, 5 for aroma, 5 for texture, and 4 for flavor.
Yeah, and I think, you know, note to cheesemaker, that packaging just I don't think has served this cheese very well in both of our positions. So I don't think it's your fault. I think there's just we're getting a very different experience than what I think you intended.
Yeah, I agree. See about double wrapping in paper or something that's just gonna not seal it in its own juices.
Yeah, I think like we've had a number with foil and they've come out pretty well, but I think the cheesemaker is well versed in using foil. And I would say the majority of that are cheese paper wrapped. So like these have done really, really well. I think maybe like the kind of this packaging, like the plastic kind of isn't, and cling film just isn't serving well in judging, and obviously backpacking naturally.
The highest version of that.
Yeah.
Great.
So, I'm just triple checking.
Have a celebratory biscuit.
Go for it. We have, where's it gone? the winner of the category is, please don't pick it out and show it again, is C21034.
1034. Ah, do pick it out or do not pick it out?
Do not pick it out. Do not pick it out.
Yep.
We would like to thank Butlers for sponsoring these beautiful new aprons for us, very standouty, very natty. And I'd love to say thank you to Perry and Bronwyn for just the most brilliant feedback. You know, guys would pay hundreds of pounds for this, and you're doing it with grace and heart, and I thank you. We need to remind everybody that the live event this year is on Wednesday, the 17th of May, where we'll be judging the best of classes in the categories, the best English, the best Irish, the best Welsh, best Scottish cheeses, along with the awards where we love to recognise the talented and very passionate people in our industry. And the day will culminate hopefully around 4:30 with the award of our Supreme Champion